We're living in these days when we seem to be getting increasingly handcuffed in our ability to connect with the world. We've gone all the way from social distancing to self-isolation to quarantine and lockdown and shelter in place, and it just seems like I can't do anything right now because I'm just like stuck here at home. And it reminds me of this common theme I've seen from studying some of the great leaders from history. These were people who were freedom fighters and who were social reformers and therefore were thrust into prison every now and then by the power and authorities of the time. And so here's a moment with Mahatma Gandhi. He was leading a reform movement in South Africa during the early kind of forays that country was making into creating more of a racist and apartheid system in the early 1900s. And so once he was thrown into prison as a result of that, and he wrote a letter to the president of the country to express his reaction to this moment when he was thrown into prison. And he said, "The prospects of getting this time for uninterrupted study and reading of all these books fills me with joy." And then there was Martin Luther King in the 1950s and 1960s. And there was moments where he was thrown into prison in Birmingham. And it led to one of these famous pieces of literature from the civil rights struggle, where he is, charging in and challenging the church of his time. There were a lot of parishioners and preachers of his time who were claiming that the civil rights movement was actually anti the Bible, anti-Christ. And he wrote this very eloquent, very thoughtful piece to actually saying, no, it's the exact opposite. We are the one who are actually keeping the conscience, of the church alive. It's a beautiful letter that he wrote from prison. And you might say, oh, that's okay. Maybe Gandhi got thrown into prison for a few days and, the same with Martin Luther King. But in my case, I'm stuck here. It's like week 2 or 3 now. And, it's just not clear when the end is going to be in sight. But if that's the case, then let's turn to another of these folks. And that is Nelson Mandela. He spent 27 years in prison. What was his reaction to his time in prison? Well, let's just hear it from him himself. And as you do, let's just ready ourselves for just getting a little bit inspired that, you never know when we are handcuffed like this, when we are forced to actually radically strip out a lot of the things that we are used to doing and just kind of like focus in a sense within on the core essentials. You just never know what opportunities it presents itself for reflection, for reading, for learning, for writing, for strategizing, and for ultimately preparing ourselves to be the best versions of ourselves.
How does a man spend 27 years in prison, put there by an oppressor, and come out of that experience with not a heart of stone, not a cold heart, but a heart that is willing to forgive and embrace? I remember talking to you one night over dinner, and you had said to me that our hatred for the oppressor was so intense, we did not see the value of talking to him. So at what point did you see the value of letting go of the hatred and begin the process of talking?
Well, let me say first, that is a great tragedy to spend the best of your lives in prison. But if I had not been to prison, I would not have been able to achieve the most difficult task in life, and that is changing yourself. I had that opportunity because in prison, you have what we don't have in our work outside prison. The opportunity to sit down and think, which is an important part.
Did you need 27 years of it, though? Really? You could have taken a few days, a week, a vacation. Did you need 27 years?
Well, even to try to change yourself is a process.